We're back on Local Edition speaking with Peter Chan, Councilman from Monterey Park. We're talking about the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 with echoes, arguably hearing it today. But I want to talk right after the Chinese Exclusion Act was signed. What happened to the Chinese? And then we'll talk about today.
Because the Chinese were not protected under the Constitution because of this act. So they were not even accepted anywhere else. So in the 1890s, they have to come together to protect themselves because even the police did not protect them at all, and the courts cannot protect them at all. So they have to come together and protect themselves. So at that time, 1890s, start to form some family associations, the tongs, if you know about that, and then later on, a Chinatown was eventually formed because of those associations getting together.
That's how we have Chinatowns.
Exactly.
So that's a blessing, I must say. But be that as it may, I think it's fair to say those were very difficult times.
Right. And that's why Chinatowns were formed, to protect themselves. And because this is no outward safety or no outward mobility anywhere else. So the Chinese at that time, they kind of like live in Chinatown, work in Chinatown, and literally died in Chinatown.
Ghettoized. I mean, they were truly ghettoized. I mean, we've seen ghettos with African Americans in America, with Jews in Europe. I mean, ghettos are a sad chapter in our recent history.
Exactly. And that's why, look at each Chinatown in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in New York, there's always a mortuary inside Chinatown.
Right.
So that's what's happening because they have to come together and protect themselves. And inside Chinatown, there's no need to learn English.
Right. So that makes it even harder to assimilate, which was the attack against the Chinese that they were not able to assimilate, but they had no opportunity to assimilate.
Exactly. And the reason to enact the Chinese Exclusion Act, one reason is that they say Chinese were not assimilated into the mainstream.
You're not letting them assimilate.
Because of this act, they cannot. And there's no chance for them to assimilate.
But I want to move to modern day. I think it's important.
And I want to make one more point. Is that the first generation is always tough.
Right.
No matter where you come from. And regardless
any
of
immigrant group.
Any color you are, regardless of where you come from, your language, your religions, it's tough. Only the second or third generation, they will assimilate into the mainstream because of education, because of friends, because of they grew up in here. So but the Chinese in Chinatown is always the first generation, regardless they are third, fourth, fifth generation, because they are confined to Chinatown. And that's why there's no chance for them to get assimilated.
But fortunately, with time, we did see that America started to recognize the scourge of discrimination.
Right. And that's until the end they repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1943. The reason for the appeal is not that the Congress at that time saw this unjust to the Chinese or they did something wrong for the last 61 years. It's because of the World War II. Because in 1941, in December, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
And think about this. America repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1943 just as they're interning Japanese. And we have the Korematsu decision, which called the internment of Japanese constitutional.
Exactly. So it's a lot of controversial stuff there. And the reason to repeal that is just because the Japanese in China asked the Chinese, don't fight with the Americans because they have the Chinese Exclusion Act. They are not your friends. We are your friends. We want to fight together to the Americans, not against us. And so for convenience and for the sake of the war, then the American Congress repealed the law to fight the Japanese in World War II.
So let's talk about what Monterey Park decided to do when we think about friendships. Because what Monterey Park realized is, it appears, what you all looked at the current political climate and felt as if that those that may be immigrants or refugees have been targeted in this current atmosphere. And so you took the opportunity of the 130th anniversary, 35th anniversary of the Chinese Exclusion Act to declare a day of inclusion. Tell us
yes.
about that.
Because we want to change the negative, the dark side of the history, into a positive, so that everyone coming to America realized, although we went through the dark side, we went through the bad stuff, went through all those difficult times, but there's a hope that we have a day of inclusion. We use that day as a day of inclusion to welcome everyone who believes in the American dream, who believe in the American Constitution, that they can, regardless of where they come from, regardless of the color, regardless of the religion belief, that they can come to Monterey Park and come to America to live the American dream and to live the American way of life.
But sir, it's clear that there are some who are turning inward. Our current president has made it very clear that he wants to limit immigration. He is not as interested in welcoming refugees as prior administrations. He wants to punish cities that create a sanctuary status. Right. You know, I don't see sanctuary in this document, but you know, it's hard to know what's going to happen with his desire to withhold funding from sanctuary cities, which are undefined at this stage.
Right.
But talk to us about that and how that played into your decision to take a stand and at least create a welcoming ordinance.
On this declaration, a day of inclusion, we confirm the constitutional rights of every American people, that we have the freedom of speech, we have the freedom to stay here, and freedom of assembly and religion.
That's the challenge. Who are Americans? If one is undocumented, you know, arguably you're not an American.
Right, right.
And so how are the residents of Monterey Park, as they reflect on the 135th anniversary of the Chinese Exclusion Act, feeling? I mean, like you said, there are significant numbers of Latinos. Many may be documented, many may not be. I'm sure there are
also Chinese.
Yeah, I'm sure there are Asian Americans that may or may not be documented.
Exactly.
And so, what's the mood?
We just offer a beam of hope for them, that under our Constitution, we welcome anyone who believes in the American dream. They want to live the American way of life.
But how far do you fight? I mean, we don't know how far you're going to have to fight. Look, California may become a sanctuary state, whatever that may mean. But
if that's the case, then we are inside California. So we're under that. And there's, of course, cities, we cannot fight the federal government.
But are you willing to reject their funding if they say, unless you withdraw this welcoming ordinance, we're going to withdraw federal funds?
But in our ordinance, there is no say or mention of sanctuary city. We are very careful on that.
But I think it does beg the question, because you know, look, we are a nation of immigrants. Most everyone, unless you're Native American,
right,
you know, you're an immigrant. But these are challenging times right now.
It is.
I mean, they're times that no one would expect that we would face, but we are facing them, and there are echoes.
Right.
You know, we hear the echoes of the Chinese Exclusion Act. We hear the echoes of the voyage of the damned.
Exactly.
When, you know, 1,000 German Jews were not let off and had to be shipped back.
So we can only offer them a beam of hope. There's good days, hopefully, in the future.
I just want to thank you for bringing this very important historical event to our attention. It's one that we hear about, but no, we've learned a lot about it, and I honor you and your service. His name is Peter Chan. He is a councilman in the city of Monterey Park. My name is Brad Pomerance. You're watching Local Edition.